to Florida. This is what you call a 5-star service right here. Finally dropped the big news yesterday, and that is that I am driving Drift Masters. And I have to say, it's something that I've been talking about, and it's something that has been a dream of mine. I didn't think that would happen so soon, but me being able to do a half season of FD this year allowed it to happen. Why do I want to drive Drift Masters? Well, some of the best drivers in the world, a lot of European drivers that don't get to come over and drive Formula Drift, but more than anything, it has been a dream of mine to drive one of their stadium tracks. I see the videos always popping up, the vibe, the audience, all the lights, and the fact that literally they are creating a track inside of a stadium. It is going to be probably the biggest drift event to ever happen in the world with over 50,000 people there. It's a massive honor to drive. I will be revealing the details of what I'm going to drive. Originally, the plan was to bring the E36. Wasn't able to get the 3.4 that I like to have in that chassis in time, so I made the decision rather than shipping out the car in a form that I am not stoked on it, I'd see what I could source locally and maybe find something that could be competitive. If you guys are getting sick about me talking about the FDRX7 giveaway, I do have good news, and that is that the giveaway is ending Sunday at midnight. So this is going to be your last window to get entered for a chance to win this 500 horsepower beast. It is beautiful, it sounds great, it drives great, and we've got a slew of products on both LZMFG and Drift HQ that are gonna get you a buttload of entries that could result in this thing being in your garage. Now, Vargas is an absolute madman, and he's literally driving down as we speak with the new and improved four-rotor, so I'll wait for him to get here before we dive into the engine setup. But we do have one new and improved chassis thing going on that Johan's actually finishing up right now, and that is an external surge tank. If you remember with this car, we wanted to use the stock fuel tank just because it keeps the center of gravity really low. The factory tanks are plastic and they just like really conform to the contours of what space is allowed underneath the chassis. So we were looking into possibly going fuel cell, but that would have resulted in having to cut up a lot of the car, and we would have been limited to about half the space. So we would have gone from like 14 gallons down to I think 7 or 8, and that's using like a production fuel cell. If we had a custom one made, we might have been able to get a little bit bigger, but it basically would have had to fit within the confines of this rectangle. Because again, I don't want to just put it rear behind the rear axle. You feel the weight a lot, and it kind of creates a pendulum effect if you don't have stuff in front of the rear axle or as low as it can go. So being that having a big fuel tank is important to me if I want to use this thing on a track that involves lots of laps, or if I ever want to street drive it, which might happen someday, we opted to do the surge tank. And now we can always go down the road if we decide to go fuel cell, but I think this should do the trick. Before, we had 2 in-tank pumps. We had one brushless pump and one DW300. I think we had enough fuel for what the car needed, but there's some issue maybe to do with a check valve or the factory siphoning system. So to throw all that out the window, basically now it is running just one factory brushless pump as a lift pump. That fills up the surge tank, and then we have 2 brushless pumps that'll be feeding the engine. I'm hoping we don't have fuel pressure issues, and I'm pretty confident we won't, because if we have good fuel pressure, that means we can start to get a little spicy, start mixing in some methanol and maybe even some nitro, and try to make a little bit more power on this thing. Because there's some dudes bringing out some fast cars to LZ World Tour Toronto, and this is the car that I want to drive and compete in, and the torque that it makes right now is going to be cutting it close. As we're talking about that, Johan just brought something to my attention that might have actually been the problem that we had the whole time.
When Adam was planning the whole surge tank and the factory tank stuff, I was thinking, and we did have 2 pumps here, and then we had a return. The way the factory system works is it has this suction valve diaphragm thing, and this clips into the tank, and it sucks fuel through there, and it goes down, and then the factory like pressure regulator and fuel pump sucks the fuel out, and then it comes out of this line. And then, so this basket is really small. I mean, so with that being so small, and then you add another pump in there, you're taking
Probably like half of the volume away.
yeah, you're taking a lot of the volume out of the surge tank. That could be one of the reasons why we were dropping fuel pressure drastically. It's just we didn't have enough volume in the tank or in the basket for the demand of the motor, of the engine.
And that would explain too why it's kind of random, because like in the beginning of a pull, say like at a lower load, even though it's making the same power because it's NA, if it was a short pull, it wouldn't really lose fuel, but a long pull it would, which would point towards running out of volume rather than running out of fuel pump.
Right. That surge tank is bigger. It's not the biggest one, but I think that should be good enough. And then the return is going to come from the engine to the tank, and then there'll be a feed from that tank, and then overflow from this tank to the OEM tank. But
just to nerd out for a second, if you aren't familiar with how a surge tank works, you see 5 lines going on here. we've got 2 lines coming off the fuel pump. Those Y in, this is our feed, okay? Then we have another one, it doesn't really matter which one it is, but for all intents and purposes, let's say this is coming from the factory fuel tank. So this is filling up this surge tank with fuel, and then from here it goes to the engine, and then we also have a return, so whatever fuel the engine isn't using is filling up the surge tank. So both of these lines are filling up the surge tank at all times, and then this is essentially like an overflow. So if this fills up too much, it sends it back to the factory fuel tank. So in an ideal world, this would always be full of fuel, never have any sloshing issues, and always have enough fuel for these 2 fuel pumps that are sat right in there. Engine bay is coming back together nicely. It's funny how much you don't realize how much paint makes a difference until it's paint.
Seeing the new parts on it, like contrasting.
Well, the funny thing is they're not even new. It's literally the same stuff we had before. It's just like it contrasting on fresh paint versus contrasting on old crusty looks way better. And it's not like the paint was bad before. Just like the factory cars, they don't really spray the frame rails, and like certain areas are kind of dusted. Really cool use of the Griot's hybrid micro polisher. I've been using it a lot lately for like little touch-up spots on paint that you can't normally get to, but using it for metal polish, I screwed up a wheel the other day when I was fixing, what was I doing? I was resealing it, which by the way, we gotta reseal another stupid LMGT1. Yeah. I was able to use this to polish out a scratch, and I was like, huh, this thing actually works great for small little aluminum things. So this, instead of polishing it by hand, I'm gonna use some of their metal polish with the hybrid micro polisher. Also, fun fact, these things get you a buttload of entries, I think like 80 entries, and we have, I think like 20 in stock on LZMFG. But I just like it because it's small, it's battery powered, so you don't need to run cords, and very, very handy for a lot of things. Like, I hate when radiators, you get like a little bit of coolant overflow on them, and then they're like forever stained. Yeah. So my new favorite use of the Griot's hybrid micro polisher. Last time with the other engine, it may have been because it was hurt, but we were having issues getting it to idle how we wanted. So I'm just going ahead and gonna do a smoke test on the whole thing. Easiest way to do it, since I don't have enough rubber plugs, I'm gonna try to tape up all of the holes, see if it holds enough to identify to us if we have any leaks anywhere else. Oh, instantly, bro, it puts pressure on the tape. Really? Yeah, I feel like it's not gonna really last. I guess there's not that much pressure. These flanges are the ones we're worried about. It does have an O-ring, but I mean, as of right now, they're looking pretty good. Oh, I mean, that's blowing out of here. Yeah, I mean, it looks to be sealed. Nice.
I think you could turn it off now.
They really hate how this smells. Oh, Vargas? Well, I think it's time.
This is how you pull in style.
Go all the way in so we keep the AC in. I'm gonna crush your rental car if you stay here. Welcome to Florida. Oh, God. You are absolutely crazy. This is what you call a 5-star service right here.
Haven't slept since 7 in the morning yesterday.
7 in the morning?
Yeah.
You drove through the night?
Yeah.
You are a crackhead. I thought you were sleeping.
Nah, hell no. I literally built it last night yesterday through the day. Finished it last night, went home, showered, and...
What's this?
That's Lee's.
You built Lee's motor too?
Yeah.
You're crazy.
Well, his has been built for a couple weeks, but okay. Yeah. We're disrespecting the rental, of course.
Hey, look, we weighed a lot of the options of how to get the motor down here safely, timely, and it worked out this way. So luckily we could one-way rent a car.
My legs are like jello right now. I'm like feeling it.
You ain't got cruise control?
No, I'm saying the lack of sleep.
Oh yeah, well go take a nap. We'll get the motor in and then play with all the fun happy juice later.
Yeah, we got an Xbox upstairs.
Right now, we got the new and improved.
You want
the race motor? Now it's a race motor, not a street motor anymore.
You want to go over it once it's on a stand?
Yeah.
All right, let's do it.
Well, yeah, still got the stickers on the pants.
Look how the struggle is. I didn't even have time to pack. I literally had PJs on and stopped at Ross before I got here. Just so I wouldn't look like an idiot. This is what I wore last night. And I headed this way with this.
But you defeated the purpose because you stopped because you didn't want to be seen in these when you showed up here, and you showed them to us anyway.
Yeah. It's different wearing them though.
Hey, Space Jam pajamas, that's a flex.
Yeah, it kind of is. Space Jam went hard back in the day. His friends. Holy, bro, he ain't playing. That thing's heavy.
Not pretty good.
You cannot pick that up. Yeah, I could. All right. They get me.
I'm gonna get him. If you can do it, I'm gonna get him.
Them chicken legs, they're not gonna do it. Bro, it's,
Oh my god. What's up? All right, Mike. What's new on our new and improved engine? Walk us through the failure from your own words instead of mine.
so what happened was the front rotor bearing got stuck on the shaft and it spun it inside the rotor. So pretty much had a rotor bearing failure. Everything else looked good. There was no issues with the new rear gear that we installed that has a carrier bearing, and everything else looked fine, like bearing wise. It was just that one rotor, so we don't know if it was just like a freak accident, or I think it was, I heard on YouTube that the tuning might have had to do with it.
Look, you and I both know it wasn't a fueling problem.
Yeah, so definitely the rotor bearing snagged and it caught. For what reason, we don't know, but we're not taking that chance again with the bearings that we ran. So right now we're running Mazda Motorsports competition bearings, which are 5 thousandths more clearance.
I already explained that the original engine was a street motor for the FD.
Yes.
So now that we know how this engine's gonna live, and then what do we need to do?
Yeah,
we have
so-
some new plates too.
The plates got lapped, so everything's like fresh, starting from zero pretty much. Touching up on that bearing thing, like initially, yes, we built this engine as a street engine, and on street engines you don't run loose clearances on bearings because your oil pressure is practically like 15-20 psi at idle, which is a no-no on a car that's loaded at low RPM, and you know it's going to always be at low RPM technically, because you're not going to go to Starbucks at 11,000 RPM.
True.
Yeah. So this was built technically 4 years ago initially, and it did really well for what it was. So it was a street motor on a Supra on a race car. Now it has a race motor on a race car.
What I'm excited about is we've come to the conclusion that the damage to the bearing probably happened in Atlanta.
Yes.
Because in Atlanta, I felt like a weird vibration, but everything seemed fine. Like I had a little bit of smoke, and the smoke you said might have been something else.
Yeah, it was one of the rear plates from an initial problem we had over here.
Got it, when this was moving before
Yeah,
we
when
switched
this
to the
was
rear
moving.
carrier.
Yeah.
In other words, I think on the dyno, without other fueling, this setup now that it's fully refreshed should make more power. Because like looking at the dyno, I think the last time it was on the dyno it was already hurt. Because even though it made more power peak, down low, not attributing to intake manifold, like literally right off the dyno brake at like 3,000 RPM, you could just see that it was like 20 or 30 foot-pounds of torque. So like maybe it was already a little hurt.
It's definitely gonna be way looser now. The only thing we should do is turn up the oil pressure, and that's the only thing we have to change.
And we're gonna move the sensor to the front rotor versus the rear one, because that would be seeing the lowest pressure. So don't mind the blue. That's just so we can make sure everything's all right.
Even though the oil pump's on the front, it still feeds from the back forward. So we're monitoring oil pressure over here, and this is the last rotor that gets oil, and this is the one that failed. So we want to make sure that we're getting the same oil pressure over here than we are over here, because this is seeing a dash 12 oil line or dash 10 oil line, I believe, and this front one's seeing a dash 6. So there's like a big step down from plate to plate. So we're gonna monitor oil pressure from the farthest one and make sure that that wasn't the issue that we ran into with that bearing.
I'd assume too, now that the engine's quite a bit looser, oil temps will probably not climb as high.
Yep.
Because before, when the engine would get hot, like, and everything would expand, you could feel like when you went to start it that the motor was dragging a little bit.
So I think like with that much volume that we had with oil from that pump and having the clearances so small, it was like working that oil a lot more. So now that's got bigger clearances, bigger channels, it should utilize that volume better now. So it's actually gonna flow and cool faster. So hopefully we don't, I don't think we're gonna need the bypass valve anymore if it drops it how it's gonna drop it with these bearings.
Yeah.
Because the oil pressure is gonna drop, so we're gonna have to turn it up.
And God.
It's Adam's phone. Big ass mouth.
No, but he's vlogging.
I'm not vlogging.
Oh, you go from engine building to vlogging?
Yeah.
That's a downgrade.
How's the pizza?
It's delicious. I'm almost done with it.
Do that? Yeah. Oh, that's what we're doing?
Yeah.
Hey, this is Johan's favorite way to do this shit.
Don't drop that.
We used to do this in our 20s back in the day. Bottoms towards me. Oh, God. Towards you? Yep. Boom!
You see, John, that's why I do that with that seat.
It's Johan's birthday, by the way, today. So happy birthday, Johan.
Shout out Johan. Coming
Big
in
shout
on
out.
his birthday. He should be enjoying his day off.
I'd rather be here.
I just threw Adam right under the bus like that.
John loves you though. We've been having a little war lately ever since I called him out on you know what.
That's not in the video. I'm gonna kill somebody.
What?
Oh, it is now.
No, it's not.
What is it?
We almost ready to fire?
Yeah.
All right.
Ready?
Yep.
Thank you.
We need to jump back up here.
Alright.
All right, let her eat. I didn't expect it to sound different. It sounds way different now. So it was idling a little weird. We just realized that this guy pulled out of injector number 1. Seeing that that is the rotor that lost compression, maybe it was starting to short and the connection was starting to fail. And maybe that's what killed it.
Yeah, it could be because it's been perfect this whole since December. So there is such a thing as detonation causing shock, and if it was coming on and off, which it looks like it was arcing, it could have caused a detonation event to where the rotor snagged on the E-shaft.
All right, we're on the dyno. I'll be operating old girl today. We got Vargas on the keyboard. What are you doing? What's the process? What's going on here, buddy?
Just mentally preparing myself to make some horsepower.
You know, it's a hard day to make horsepower, but
Yeah.
what? So I think the max we've made on this car so far was like 470s.
470, yeah.
I'm saying looser motor, fixed rotor, so we've got some real compression now with the new intake, all the changes. 480s first pass.
Let's do it.
I think for sure. But we're not gonna rev it out all the way since new motor breaking in, so we'll probably, I think it makes peak power for 8 grand anyway, so
I think it does, yeah. You already changed the RPM, right?
yeah, it's the limiter set to 8 grand now, just as a break-in tune.
Okay.
So we'll leave closed loop on, and then we'll just look at the trims and we'll adjust the table based on that. So we lifted in that pull because we started having an oil pressure drop, which is new since this thing had pretty rock steady oil pressure. So we're looking into that further before we continue. Only dropped to 80 PSI, so still in the safe zone, but this trend of it dropping with RPM is not a good thing, so we want to look into it. I will say the one thing I'm really stoked about, the new fuel system appears to be working like a charm because it always had issues. It literally looks like a flat line now. So that's great. RPM goes up, fuel pressure, bat. You know what that means?
No more starvation. No more 18 AFR.
No, it means
Power, baby.
yeah. It never ran 18. That was a joke in the video. I never thought I was serious. Yeah, for real. Yeah. Now that we know fuel pressure, it just means that we can add a little bit of methanol, maybe a little bit of nitro.
Oh yeah. What's the duty?
The duty of the injector?
Yeah.
I don't know if I logged that. I'll log that. Now that the clearances are so big, we were able to remove the oil pressure relief valve. And what's interesting is it's still not as much oil pressure as we want. Those clearances are big. It's just weird that the oil pressure was higher before we removed it, almost like it was building pressure in the line, but then it would still, it's like it's running, it's like a volume issue, not necessarily a pressure issue.
With the bypass valve?
Well, yeah, so like maybe that, I don't even know what I'm talking about, but fueling's good, so.
It's
Lee?
Oh my God, what's
It's
up?
late.
Yeah.
Pretty much end of the day, the bearings are huge. It's got a lot of pressure. If it doesn't have high enough pressure, it's got the volume right now, you know, because of the bearing clearances. So you are moving a lot of oil through there. I would probably be more concerned with the oil temps now and check them and see how they're doing. This Chip Motorsports dry sump kit is maxed out. Like, we can't do anything more than that. And when we did order it, he didn't really have any data on what pressure should be expected. I think he said whatever it does, so.
Yeah. We didn't realize that we actually had the sensor in a different spot. One of our theories was that that front rotor was getting less oil pressure just because it's the last one to get oil pressure, which makes sense. But we didn't know how low it would be, so we put an oil pressure sensor on there. And that's the one that was only seeing 85, 90 PSI, tanking all the way down to 70. When we switched back to the old sensor that we used to use, that one...
The rear of the engine.
Yep, the rear saw 110 and tapered down to like 85. So that's telling us that we have obviously a quite notable drop from the rear to the front, but that also tells us when we lowered down the oil pressure last time, this front rotor was probably not getting that much. So,
So if you lowered it last time to, I think it was 80, like 90s, like mid 90s over here, that was the rear of the motor that reads higher, and the front is around 20 PSI lower.
yep, and at higher RPM.
So-
But we had the different bearings though, so
Yeah.
maybe it made a bit of difference. Well, unfortunately, it is absolutely late as heck outside, and this thing's extremely loud, so I don't want to push my luck. We're gonna leave it where it's at. It still needs a little bit more love on the dyno, but I think we've come a long way and we've gotten to understand a lot more when it comes to all the little random things that have been going on with this. So I very much so appreciate you driving the engine down and helping us sort through all of this annoying stuff.
We don't have to push it around anymore.
I know.
You're the real MVP.
Shit.
Damn, he doesn't say nice stuff a lot, so make sure you really take that in.
Well, at least we got a game plan of what we need to work on.
Yep. I feel like I haven't gotten a good shot with the new fresh painted bay. What'd you think about that color? You like that?
Yeah.
Hell yeah, dude. Monster red, baby.
His only red car.
I know.
Literally.
And it came red. That's a funny part.
It's got a big ass black livery.
I'm bummed. I really wanted to experiment with methanol. I had some M5, which has 5% nitro in it. Hopefully Saturday I can get the car back on the dyno, play with the tune a little bit, and maybe get a little bit of methanol in it. I would really like to crack 500 horsepower, and I feel like it'll definitely do that, but I don't want to throw another variable at it, especially with as late as it is, and I would like to do a second oil change. We already did one with the fresh motor, but now that we've done a couple hits, get some new fresh oil in it, some Pennzoil racing oil. That's what we run in this bad boy. But overall, we are actually flying up to Atlanta tomorrow, and we're on the same flight. We leave at like 5 hours. It's like dumb early. we're going up there to furniture shop because we can go to like some factory direct instead of buying it with a bunch of markups. So we're literally flying up to Atlanta just to go furniture shopping and try to save money for our house renovation. So I'll fill you guys more in on that. I'm stoked this thing's back together. I wish I had more time, but since I'm going to Poland, I need to get this thing dialed in and make sure it has my seal of approval. That way the guys can go to town with all the little finishing bits. Can come home, this thing will poof into Toronto for LZ World Tour. I'll get to go up there, drive it, and have a lot of fun with all the homies. So thank you again, dude. I appreciate it. I'm sorry we didn't crack 500, but Saturday, I bet you will.
Yeah.
There's a will, there's a way.
100% it will.
And we deleted some oil stuff, so it's getting simpler.
Oh yeah, we don't need that bypass valve anymore, so less things to worry about.
Yep.
And definitely lower pressure from the clearances, but we have more flow. I think we're gonna be pretty good, okay with it.
I didn't fully go into the numbers or anything. We did make a little bit less. You can see this yellow trace was the old graph. We're revving it a little less, and overall, it's just making it a little bit less in the mid-range. Could need a little bit more timing, a little bit less timing. Again, we kind of ran out of time, but yeah, maybe it's a fueling thing. Also, rotaries need time to break in and they actually build compression when they break in. That's a thing.
Yeah.
So
we did change everything, along with the bearings, the side seals, the apex seals, the corner seals, all the springs, like everything got replaced and fresh. So the last dyno comparison that you're comparing it to was a fully broken in motor from that we've been driving since December. You know, so that's fully broken. This is like fresh. We literally broke it in with a couple dyno pulls right now. So
also, I do want to call everyone out right now because nothing drives me more nuts than when I am fully transparent and I show my four rotors wheel horsepower, and then everyone's like, oh, well, so-and-so's car makes 700 horsepower or 600 to the crank. It could be a European dyno where their numbers literally inflate by 15%.
yeah. Show me a dyno sheet.
See a dyno sheet, then we'll talk.
Yeah.
Because I think there's a little bit of fluff around some of these other people's numbers.
Yeah.
You know? I think 500 wheel is achievable. And I think like that's like really getting all your ducks in a row.
From what I've been seeing, everybody with a four-rotor is making around between 450 to 480. So we're right around that ballpark.
But the internet says it's a four-rotor, so it should make
says they make
600.
700. They don't make 700.
Yeah. Well, we're about to put some nitro in it. We'll see. But
Then it will make 700.
I don't know about it. May be full nitro, but we're not doing that. Anyway, it's cool. It's a constant evolution, and it's fun working on something that's a little bit different and kind of pushes us outside of our comfort zone. So, thank you again, dude. Thank you guys for watching. Hopefully, you're not sick of four-rotor content yet. And yeah, see you soon. Okay, bye. Welcome to Florida. You are absolutely crazy. This is what you call a 5-star service right here.
Look how the struggle is. I didn't even have time to pack what I wore last night, and I headed this way with this.
Hell yeah. Hey, Space Jam pajamas, that's a flex.
Yeah, it kind of is. They say it went hard back in the day.